Welcome to the About podcast. Here we explore your financial health in simple and easy to understand ways.
Well, greetings and welcome everybody back to the About podcast, where we talk all things financial health related. As always, I'm Jeremy Scott, one of your hosts here, and joined by Roy. Roy Hookie, how you doing today?
I am wonderful. Very excited as always for our new guests.
I know, our new guests. We haven't had any repeat guests yet. They're all new so far.
No repeats.
Not yet. I'm sure we'll get there.
First time, long time.
Yeah, so this is a special, well, they're all special episodes, but this one I think is going to be especially interesting to people who are in, especially the world of small business, and wanting to worry about employees and retaining employees. And of course, one of the ways we retain employees is good benefits, good retirements, things like that. So we are excited to welcome Eileen Shaw of Creative Retirement Plan Consulting. I think I got that close to right.
You did?
Fantastic. Eileen, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
So Eileen, to set the table, we would like you to maybe give us a little bit of a history for yourself, and how did you end up the owner of this company before us?
Okay. Well, it goes back a while. I've been doing this for a long time. My husband and I, he's an ARISA attorney, we had a third-party administration firm.
I'm going to stop you right there. Yep. ARISA. What is ARISA for our listeners?
ARISA is the body of law that retirement plans have to comply with in order to meet all the rules, all the testing, compliance.
Do you know what it stands for? Not to put you on the spot, but
I'm guessing the R is retirement.
Retirement Security Act.
RSA.
Yeah,
that's good enough.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
We just need to know that it's a legal body, right?
Yes. It is a big body of regulations.
Yes.
Yep. So we had a firm that did third-party administration for retirement plans. Basically, we work with businesses. We help them design their retirement plans and then do all the legal compliance, testing, non-discrimination. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes from the business owner standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that we do. Not the exciting part, which is the money investing, but everything else. So we had a firm that we sold. We had for about 25 years. We sold it in 2008 to a much larger company. And it was good for a little while, and then it just didn't. It seemed like that larger company focused more on bottom line than on what was in the client's best interest. So I left there.
We've heard this story before.
Unfortunately, it's a pretty common story. Then I went to a trust company and set up a TPA, a small TPA within there. Then they went public. And so once again, I felt like the priorities changed. So I started Creative Retirement in 2019 with my partner, Chris Grease, right before COVID, which was an interesting time to start a business. But some of our clients followed us, and we got through COVID and have added another partner, Chris Bolton. And we are just, our whole focus is working with clients where they are. There has been so much aggregation of third-party administration firms where the client needs get dropped lower on the priority. It's hard for them to get calls back. It's hard for them to get the correct answers the first time they call. So we feel like Creative Retirement it's pretty basic. We're just there to support our clients and help make sure that everything that they need to deal with on the retirement side, we help them with.
So to give our listeners a little bit of perspective here, you have a CPA personally to help you with your taxes, make sure you follow the tax rules. A TPA, third-party administrator, that is kind of on the ARISA side of the fence for a business owner to make sure you follow the rules.
Right.
Make sure everything stays in line and everything's nice and neat so you don't get a big fine.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And get yourself in trouble, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that's specifically around retirement?
Specifically around retirement qualified planning.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is a big deal. I mean, for better or worse, that's how we do requirement in the United States. And retirement in the United States is mostly employer driven. So there is a responsibility placed on employers then to do that work and do it well. But if your core competency is owning a bakery, then you're probably not set up to, do your own retirement management for your employees. So that's why we would bring in someone like your group.
So a lot of times that Baker will work with someone like myself, and I'll be like, hey, we need to look at this option. And then that's when I get introduced to a TPA service, and they help to design what the business owner wants, right? And they have to follow the rules, so that you can't just do what you want. But Eileen actually walks them through the process of helping them figure out, okay, within the rules, what's important to me, and how can we design this?
Right. So what goes into a design for retirement plan? Because you're not doing like necessarily the investing side of things.
Correct.
That's more like going to be like a Roy or somebody like that who's actually going to handle the money. Once it's collected, and just investing side of it. So what goes into the designing a plan? It's
the body of regulations we have to work within. Right. But every business owner has different objectives. Sometimes it's retaining employees. Sometimes it's tax savings for them. A lot of the business owners that we work with have spent a lot of their money investing in the business, growing the business. So then all of a sudden they hit 40, 50 years old, and all of their assets are tied up in their business. A retirement plan in that place may be more focused on how do they start building their nest egg, so that when it's time for them to sell their business, they've got assets outside. But also, there is requirements. In Colorado specifically, you have to have a retirement plan. And if not, you have to use the state plan.
Right, so, and that's new.
That is new, and it's caught some people by surprise.
Yeah, we're dealing with it. We've dealt with it even at the church. So I'm the pastor of a church, and we have employees, and all that kind of stuff. And that caught it didn't catch by surprise. We knew it was coming, but there's some work we had to do.
Yeah, and for some, that is a perfectly fine option.
The state plan.
Yes, most employers though, if they're going to do something, the rules are there so that they can make those dollars that are going into a retirement plan more beneficial. They can get more bang for their buck, I would say. If you design a plan, maybe you want to do matching contributions to encourage your employees to participate. Maybe the ability to put more money in for certain employees is a priority. So we work with what are your objectives, what are you trying to accomplish, and then within the constraints of the law, design the plan to do that.
And the biggest piece of that is, the government's doing this to protect the employees from discrimination.
Right.
So that the employer can't just say, I want to put a bunch of money away for myself, but I don't really care about the employees. Right, that's the whole intention here.
Right.
It's good and bad, meaning that, anything you do has some effect. And sometimes you're like, man, I really want to do this, but I can't do it because it doesn't work with this. She referenced testing.
Right.
And it doesn't meet the testing requirements to be able to do it. So you just can't do it.
Right. Well, and I'm sure there's also most of it, I'm guessing, is more on the protecting the employee side of, regulations of them being taken advantage of, or okay, you can have a retirement plan, but you have to buy our company stock with it or something like that. I imagine it's something you can't do, or things like that,
No, exactly. And we always blame doctors, but the regulations.
We blame doctors for everything. Why not?
The regulations, a lot of them have evolved out of when there were less regulations, there was ability, doctors specifically, but professionals would set up a separate company with a whole lot better benefits in that company, and only the doctors were in that company. So things like that. Oh. So the discrimination rules have been honed to make sure that for all the benefits that the highly compensated, the owners, the people that are making a lot of money are getting, the staff are getting a commensurate benefit.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So exactly what we don't do to Congress.
Right.
Sorry, we don't get political here. I'm sorry. I just have to. You're always safe picking on Congress, though, as far as I'm concerned. So, is there a point, on the small business? Is there a point at which a business is getting to the size? If let's say, you started a small business and it's growing, is there a point at which you get to a size where you're like, oh, I really need to start thinking about working with somebody like you? on the kind of, if you're an up and coming business, because that's probably not, again, if I'm opening up a bakery, my focus is on, bread and cupcakes. So, and if it's going well, great. But at what point in is there a rule of thumb as far as you really need to start thinking about being a little more sophisticated?
I would say when the business owner is looking to put more than $15,000, $20,000 in their own account each year, it may be time to start looking at doing a qualified retirement plan, which is typically a 401k plan. The reason being, simple plans have much lower limits. The state plan has much lower limits. So when that business owner is getting to a point where their savings is becoming more important, they have some money that they can put aside, that's when you should look at a plan. Sometimes some of my businesses are 1 or 2 people, but they wanted a more sophisticated design so that they could put substantially more money away. That's really the critical piece. And then as they add employees, how do we structure the plan to allow the business owners to meet their personal savings goals at a cost that is tolerable that for their employee contributions. So it's always a balancing act, if that makes sense.
But so even a smaller company is even maybe 1, 2 people, because you can put more money in a 401k than you can in an IRA.
So it works like this, right? So if you're an individual, you can save, if you're 50 years or under, you can save $7,000 a year.
Right.
Into an IRA, Roth IRA or traditional IRA. If you're over 50, you can do an additional $1,000, so $8,000 a year. So if you're a married couple over 50 running a business, you can do $16,000. If that's all you want to do, probably good enough.
Okay.
But if you want to do more, that's when Eileen crew come in and say, hey, okay, what can we do? How can we do it? A qualified plan like a 401k allows you under 50, you know what it is for 25?
23,500.
23,500 a person.
Oh, wow. So
if you're over
3 times.
If you're over 50, you get an additional
7,500.
7,500. So that's 31,000. Did I do my math right?
Plus, we have a special rule that just started this year.
That's
so if you're
right.
between 61 and 63, the catch-up contribution is not $7,500. It's $11,250. Why it's that age range, I have no idea. But they just like they just like to make my life more complicated.
So here's it. So way more savings, right?
Right.
And that's just from their payroll, just from their W-2 that's W-2 wage income that they're actually deferring. Okay.
Right. So that's money coming out of my check as an employee or the owner. The money I would normally pay myself, I can put up to the $23,000 in there.
Yep.
Right.
Of my own money.
And then as a business owner, you have the ability to save even more on top of that through other processes like
matching contributions. So that would be those employees that are making those contributions out of their paycheck would receive a match. So that's one way. The other way is called non-elective or profit-sharing contributions, and that is money that the company makes for all the eligible employees. So you don't have to make deferrals to receive a profit-sharing contribution.
Okay. But I, as the owner, so part of the rules is then as an owner or, as a manager or an executive in this, I can create a plan that provides those things, but I can't say only I get that benefit.
Correct.
I have to give it to all my employees too.
Yes.
Okay. But I'm incentivized by doing it because I get to save more.
Yes.
This is what I'm learning about all this world when doing this podcast with Roy. It's all about incentives, right? Like, what is the incentive to do what? I mean, and most of the stuff seems structured to incentivize us, hopefully, to do the right thing.
Yep.
Correct.
Right. And as we want businesses providing retirement, so we incentivize them by doing it, by saying, as an employer, you can contribute more than I can as an individual.
Right. And the other side of it, and a key side for those business owners, is those contributions that are going in for both them and their employees are tax deferred. There's the business, the contributions for the business is an expense to the business. There's no payroll taxes on those monies. It's all an expense to the business. So there's a huge tax savings incentive for making those contributions into the retirement plan.
Right. Well, again, we incentives, right? We're incentivizing people to do the right thing either by letting them keep more of their money or taxing them less.
And there's also the piece of this puzzle where a lot of people don't do it. When I recommend it is, Eileen is a company, they make money and you have to pay Eileen to work.
As you should.
So there's cost to set that plan up and then have that administered year over year over year. Right now, the really cool thing is there is some incentive that has been placed if you're putting a new plan in place. Do you remember the details on that?
I can give you generally.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's up to, for the setup cost for the first 3 years, it's up to $5,000, a tax credit.
Total or per year?
Per year.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I didn't realize
Yeah.
that 3 years. Okay.
And it's limited by the number of participants, so it's $250 per participant. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is there's now a credit for the contributions that the employer is making, up to $1,000 per employee per year. Now, it's capped at 50 employees, so it grades down as the company gets larger. But that tax credit grades down over 5 years. But that's huge. So you're getting a credit for setting it up. You're getting a credit for the contributions you're putting in. The government wants business owners
these plans
to set up
sure.
plans.
Sure.
And that's the thing. If you're using the Colorado program, obviously the employer's not putting money in, but there's none of those incentives. So it's starting a plan for a business. It in the last couple of years has become a much more palatable.
Sure. Which makes sense. Honestly, that's one of those examples where I'm like, yes, please spend my tax money on that. Like incentivizing people to do the right things and get people saving so we have less people.
Yep. So, okay, you're a business owner in Colorado right now. You're listening to this podcast. You're like, what? Business plan? What? What does this mean? Talk about this Colorado requirement. Give us a little bit of an explanation around that and how that works if they don't have a plan for the company and what they should maybe consider if they don't have a plan going forward.
So the Colorado plan is it's basically an IRA that gets set up for the employees, and the employees have an option to make contributions. The employer does not make any contributions into that plan. So it's more of a making an IRA option available through the workplace for all employees. If a company, though, if a business owner wants to have a retirement plan to save their employees, to help their employees, then they should reach out to somebody like you who can kind of guide them in what should they be looking at? How much should they be setting away? Maybe their CPA comes back to them and says, a retirement plan would make some sense. That's where they would reach out to you or to me, and we would help them design the plan that best meets those objectives and that can evolve as those objectives change. A lot of times a company is just trying to, let's get something in place. Let's let the employees put some money in, and maybe we're not in a position to put contributions in for our employees. That's fine. You get the plan in place, and then as the business grows and there is more money, we have options to start utilizing those matching provisions, start using safe harbor provisions, start using profit sharing contributions.
So then in regards to the state plan, it's like an IRA. How much can the employee put in that IRA versus a normal IRA? Is it the same rules?
I feel like it, and I'm not great on that.
One.
It's I feel like it's about $6,000.
Nobody really wants to deal with the state and their money.
Well, that's the other thing is it's
just come to someone like me and they could do $7,000, right?
Yeah.
Really
do you want the state managing it?
Right.
No,
I don't think so.
No.
So if I am a small business owner and I come to someone like you to do this, you're going to help me set it up in the first place, design the matching rules and everything as I best get them today. But then are you continuing to help manage the plan afterwards? So if I've got employees coming and going, and they need to get people on board the plan and off board the plan, and and all of that, is that part of the service?
It is. So we stay involved. We help our clients with the testing, with the eligibility rules tracking, vesting tracking, and then contribution calculations every year. There's a tax return called a 5500 that is due each year on these plans. So we prepare those. So we do everything from a compliance standpoint. There's another another partner in this whole process. And it typically starts just to make with talking to somebody like Roy. Clients don't come to me, or employers don't typically come directly to me.
Right.
They're going to come through their advisor.
Right.
And then there is a record keeper who is a separate entity that takes the money, that has the website that the participants engage with. And that's where the investments are typically held. We are, like I said, we're more behind the scenes. I work with the business owner. Roy works with both the business owner and is a face for the employees in this scenario. And then the record keeper is who the participants typically work with.
So a qualified business plan like a 401k is really like a three-legged stool, right? So you have the record keeper, which is the entity that holds the assets. So in Colorado, you have Empower. That's a big one in Colorado. You have Fidelity, you know, John Hancock, all these big companies out here that can hold those assets, okay? But all they do is really hold that and record it. But the design of what investments go into that needs someone like myself that can help design that, right? So then you have the advisor piece of it. So they pull the levers and help design, I guess, not really pull the levers. The actual participants have to choose what they invest in. I actually, even as advisor of the plan, I can't actually help them choose. I can just advise them and they have to do it.
Right.
Go online, do it. Call the 800 number, whatever. And then you have, you know, the TPA service, which is the one that keeps us in line so we don't break any rules. So those three pieces of that, and the really cool thing for any business owner is that some of those things are bundled. So like some companies sell bundled services where it's like all in one. And reality is though, I typically do unbundled so that if a employer is unhappy with any piece of the three-legged stool, they can replace it. They can replace myself. They can replace the record keeper. They could replace the TPA.
Okay.
And full disclosure, I should have done this probably at the beginning, is that Eileen actually does my personal company plan.
Sure.
Right. So that's one of the things that she's helping us with. We had a not great experience with the previous TPA. And you know, we want to have a good experience and have them treat us like humans and not like we're idiots every time we call in. And, you know, we don't live, even me as an advisor, I don't live in TPA land.
Right.
Right. I don't want to. I want Eileen to exist so that I can go to her when I need help, but I don't want them to make me feel like an idiot when I do. Right. So that's why Eileen's company is so good, because they actually focus on the client. And I actually found Eileen, funny story, because one of her TPAs that she has on staff used to work at a different company I had a great experience and relationship with. And I was like, I need a new TPA. I'm going to find her because I know her. Her name's Ann. And just so happened that she ended up at Eileen's company about the time that I'm searching her up. And then that's how I met Eileen. And I was like, hey, I'd like to talk. And we sat down, had lunch, and with your partner, actually, Chris, and got to know each other before I decided to do business with them. But I really appreciate their approach with the personal style, which is kind of what I do for my clients, right?
Right.
I want my clients to feel like they're cared for and heard and not just like pointed at and told.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah, so I think, you know, it sounds great, and especially since, again, I mean, you know, the small business owners especially, who I'm guessing is, you know, a lot of the clientele, I mean, they want to focus on their business.
Right.
Right. They want to, I mean, hopefully we all want to do right by our employees and treat them well, but, you know, and do good on it, but there's a limit to how much bandwidth of my mental capacity I want to give over to this stuff. I'd rather work with people who knew what they're doing.
The business owners need this team, and they need, you know, I look at myself as a quarterback of that three-legged stool, right? But they don't have the capacity or the time to know if every little rule is right, and they depend on their professionals in their life to do a good job.
Right.
Right. And make sure that they're not breaking any rules so that the Department of Labor comes along and slaps them with a fine.
Right.
Right. Which can't happen.
Which, by the way, I actually have run into those situations where, like, there's 401k plans out there that are a mess. They're a disaster. I'm sure you probably see way more than I do.
I do. It's shocking how messy some of them get. And so much of it is a lot of the providers out there, payroll companies that do retirement plans, for example, it's really not, it's self-service. So the employers don't even know how much is being pushed back on their plate. They don't know the questions to ask. They don't know the rules that they're supposed to be following, that those providers are pushing onto the employer's plate. Our whole approach is you run your business, you run your bakery, you
Right.
make the best bread that you can make. Let us manage that piece so that you can just focus on your business and we focus on this piece for you, almost like you're outsourcing your this part of your benefits.
Right.
Well, I've learned kind of how I want to approach this. And that's why I do this independent thing, because I actually had a bundled situation one time. I was the advisor, and the other two pieces, the record keeper and the TPA service, were bundled.
Mm-hmm.
I could make the call with the client to set it up, but my expectation was that they were going to walk them through, educate them, and help them build out the plan, right? Not even close. They're
No.
like, okay, here's the question. What's the answer you want? Well, the client was like, what do you, I don't know. Like, well, tell me about it. They had no guidance, none. It's self-service is exactly like they're going up and just like, well, I don't know what to pick. I don't know why I would pick this. Can you educate me? No, you have to tell us. Well, what do I have you for?
It's like, wait,
But
hold on.
But those exist, so that's why employees get themselves in a pickle where they now have a problem, and it's really hard to fix that problem.
Yeah.
Right. So a great example why Eileen is so important, even for like, there's a situation like, let's say you're a single employee, single owner, and you're the only thing that exists, right? You can open what they call an owner or a solo 401k plan.
Okay.
But depending how you establish that plan and the rules you put on that plan, if you hire someone part-time for just a little bit of work, they might qualify for that plan, which now just completely annihilated what you were trying to do, and you didn't even realize it. And I've had that happen too.
I've taken over like 3 of those situations in the last year, and it is an ugly surprise because the business owner's been going along putting deferrals in and putting contributions in, and all of a sudden they have to make an equivalent contribution to their employee that they had no idea was even eligible for the plan.
So it affects not only the plan, but then it affects that tax year for them personally, for the business. It's
and the big check you got to write.
It's a real disaster.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the other place. It maybe I'm an up-and-coming business and I do something for the first time, but also like to Roy's example, like I've got something I'm not happy with, or maybe we did one of those self-serve things because when my business was smaller,
right,
but now my business is more medium-sized and I got a bunch of employees running around and I'm like, okay, I need help. I need more help. So that'd be another scenario in which they might call you up and say, Irene, bail me out.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of situations, I think, where the regulations for this, for retirement plans is huge and it's unduly complicated. And so even a lot of the CPAs that I work with, they're like, we don't want to know all these rules. And I can say, I don't want to know all the things that Roy does, and I don't want to know all the things that the CPAs do. I stick to my knitting, and it's plenty.
Yeah.
It's plenty.
It's really high caliber knitting.
High caliber knitting. This is advanced. This is not just knit 1, purl 2. So, okay. And because you mentioned earlier, you're preparing like the tax form and stuff that would go to the CPA and they'd be like, all right, I know how to deal with this kind of distilled version of it, and that kind of thing.
We actually do the tax return and it goes signature ready to the client and they just electronically file it.
For the 5,500 specifically, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that piece of it's taken care of.
Right. So obviously things like employee retention, if you got that, there's obviously tax benefits, being able to save more, for yourself. If you're the owner, getting out in front of the IRA limits, things like that. What is the other commercial for doing this kind of work, you think? What are the other kind of big advantages to people to having a robust retirement plan?
It really is attracting and retaining employees. This, I'm sure it's nationwide, but in Colorado, it is tough to find really good employees and then keep them.
Mm-hmm.
And benefits have become a huge piece of that puzzle. So I would say that is a key. And then a lot of times with the employer contributions, we put a vesting schedule on it. So that means that an employee has to stay for a certain period of time until it's all theirs. It's those kinds of things that we hope that the employees understand enough that the benefit to staying is better than the benefit of leaving and going to another employer.
It's a very true thing. I was just speaking to a business owner about how, previously when they were hiring, the employee sitting in the chair across is more interested in what is the hourly pay, right, or salary of what they're going to be doing. And the reality is today, it's like, well, how much time off am I going to have? Like that's more important than actually that salary.
Yeah.
In the hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
How much time do I get off? Do you have benefits? Do you have a health insurance? Do you have a 401k plan? Mm-hmm. What's the match?
Yeah.
All those things.
I've been doing this a little bit with my son, who's just entering the workforce and everything. He's working for these smaller firms, but I keep asking him, like, so what's the deal with benefits? And I'm like, well, they haven't really talked to me about it. They're not really pushing it. And I'm like, and he's in security. And there's a lot of churn in that industry. And I'm
why.
like, and that's probably why, like, they just get you set up and you leave. But it's also like, but maybe you have to keep people a little bit more if they have a sense of investment in this place. And, and I think matching in 401ks and investing periods and stuff really, helps with that. I know it's been part of my thinking when I was in corporate, you would definitely think about, the whole picture of what's going on.
Especially as we get closer to retirement.
Right. But it also sounds like there's also a little bit of risk mitigation, in this, that if you find yourself in an out of compliance situation, like you talked about, where you had, employee that was eligible and you weren't treating them as eligible or whatever, or, I don't know if things get audited, retirement plans get audited the way other things get audited, or, but it sounds like there's also a risk mitigation, for the business owner as well.
I would say that we're probably a huge risk mitigation piece of this. There is, I had a client call me yesterday and he's like, we're being audited, just kind of out of the blue. He said, should I be concerned? We're doing everything correctly. So let us help you with that. But the other thing is, people that do late 5500s, they don't think about it. They don't realize that they were supposed to have filed it. And that's a lot of times what Roy had referred to as the bundled world. They put it out there on their portal, and it's up to the client to get it submitted, and there's no follow-up. If you don't submit your 5500 on time, those fines are huge. We've had clients that get letters $150,000.
What?
And then you have to hire a lawyer to try and get it's
which
just
is notoriously affordable.
Yeah,
hiring lawyers.
There's no. We're like an insurance policy. Yes, we have fees, but it's way less than what the costs are if you make a mistake.
Which is actually one of the fun things about the way I met Ann, who now works for her, is that I had a difficult client, and it wasn't difficult as in like they just didn't do what you wanted to do in a timely manner, right? So you had to follow up. And that was one of the things that Ann was so good at, was she just would follow up. She's like, well, the fine's going to be this if you don't submit it by this time, and it's just a very kind way of doing it. But it's when the client saw that, they're like, oh, this is important. I better do this, right? Like, I don't want to pay that fine. But unfortunately, you do have business owners that are just so busy. They're like, okay, when they see that, they're okay, please, yes, I'll submit this, but I don't want to pay that fine. And making them aware of that is what the bundled folks don't do.
Right.
And that's why it's really important to have someone like an Ann that's just gently nudging. Like, well, here's the email chain of 12 emails that you have not responded to. And I told you here there was a fine. I told you here there was a fine.
Yeah, we get a little naggier as the deadlines loom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, you see it's your reputation too and everything. But, I think that one of the themes of this whole podcast has been you get what you pay for, and that there's a lot of savings in the long run for just doing things the right way. And, and I wouldn't pretend to be an expert in retirement. I wouldn't pretend to be an expert in a lot of things. So why not work with one? Right. A little bit of money up front. Sure. I mean, there's some cost in it, but there's a lot of value on the other end too, and it's.
Can we talk through loosely, company out there that maybe want to set up a plan? What are some of the questions that you would ask them that we can maybe pre-educate people to think about, to be able to set up a plan for the first time?
Usually the way I approach is what's your budget for your employee contributions? What do you want to do for your employees? That is a key piece. how much are you looking to put away for yourself? What do you want to be doing? Employer contributions that go to everybody, or are you looking at just trying to take care of those people that are willing to step up and put some money in on their own? I think those are some of the key pieces. We haven't really even talked about cash balance plans, which are a defined benefit type plan. They are much more sophisticated, more complicated, but the business owners can put a lot more money away on behalf of themselves and their employees. When we're looking at those kinds of plans, then the requirement for stable long-term income is there. You can't have a great year. Sometimes a law firm will come to us. They have a huge settlement. They want to throw a cash balance plan in so they can put $400,000 or $500,000 away. But if they aren't going to be able to do substantial contributions for the next 3 to 5 years, that's not a good option.
Okay. So cash balance, we're talking more like traditional pension defined benefit kind of plans, the things that are going away pretty much everywhere.
But they're not. The cash balance plans in small businesses are the fastest growing type of retirement plan.
Really?
Yes. So again, it's because there's a lot of business owners that are approaching their retirement. They need to get a lot of money set aside in a short period of time because they've been spending all their money growing their business. So to be able to put for that business owner $300,000 away each year for the next 10 years, that's going to be a huge number that you can't get there with just a 401k plan alone.
Gotcha.
And it comes down to that liquid versus illiquid assets, right? So these business owners that put all of their assets into building the business, right, over a period of time, now they're starting to have some success, some good cash flow. So now we want to create some liquidity because maybe they sell their business, but maybe they don't. Maybe they just continue to own it, and the kids are coming in and taking ownership or something, like that, right? So you never know if you're going to have a big cash payout on that business, and that's another podcast in itself talking about how to sell a business. But that's where we create that liquidity for those business owners in a tax efficient way. Right, it saves them huge on taxes today, and then they take that tax hit in the future when they decide to pull the money out. Yeah. So that's a really big piece of that puzzle for people, and why do they consider these things is because of that.
So I wouldn't even have thought of that. I mean, and if I'm the hypothetical baker, I wouldn't even be thinking about that. But that's again why we talk to you and be like, okay, well, have you thought about this? And is that why it's creative retirement solutions?
It is. It is.
But so coming in clearly knowing your goals, right? Or what, around how much, and a lot of that's around how much do you have? How much do you want to spend?
Yeah.
How much do you need for yourself? How much do you want for your employees?
Right. And a lot of times an employer doesn't have any idea. So what we do is Roy would get a census from that business owner, and we show them illustrations of different types of plans so they can actually visualize, okay, if I do this is what it would cost us.
Okay.
And so I mean, I don't think it's fair for us to say that somebody needs to come in knowing exactly what they want to do, but have some ideas, and they have to be willing to spend the money to set the plan up and to manage it.
Right.
Yep, and to see the value there, because they can save a lot. I mean, it's always one of those things where $1 spent is $1 spent into some employers, right? But for instance, this is a small employer that Eileen's company is working with that, they have someone who gets bonuses, but they're going to bonus it into the profit share instead of through their pay, because then the employee doesn't have to pay the FICA.
Right. Okay.
And the employer doesn't have to pay the FICA. So they just saved 15%.
Right.
For the 7.5% for the client or for the employee and 7.5% for the actual owner. Well, that's real dollars saved, but you don't actually see that, right?
Right.
Specifically. So you have to make sure that people are seeing those numbers and understand, like, hey, you're actually saving this money here, costing whatever to pay their company. Big deal when I just saved a whole lot of money by putting this, these bonuses into the profit share.
Right. So there's probably upfront fees and to get things going.
Yep.
And then ongoing for management, a little something, I would assume.
A little something.
A little something. Well, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, everybody's got a right to earn some money. I mean, you pay for expertise.
Well, it's always about that complexity, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't have here's what you pay, right? It's like,
Right.
well, it depends. how complex is this thing?
Right.
And that's what it's going to cost to set it up.
And how much is it worth to me as a small business owner to be able to ignore something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just be able to like, all right, I'm going to give you some thoughtful time and energy. We're going to set this up the right way, and then I'm not going to have to think about it, or at least not a lot.
Yeah.
Until you tell me I have to think about it, and then
Right.
I'm like, that's lovely. I don't know. I'm getting old. I don't multitask anymore.
So do you have any other kind of tips for business owners that you've just seen that like, hey, if I'm going to just add some value to a business owner right now, what's a tip you could maybe drop that would help protect them from themselves?
Common pitfalls you've seen
Well,
people
you
getting
know,
themselves in trouble.
I think the biggest thing is if you have a retirement plan, take a look at it.
Mm.
Have somebody look at it independently. Make sure that things are being done correctly. There are so many rules, and sometimes, as you say, somebody sets up a plan and doesn't pay any attention to it. And if you aren't periodically looking at it, you're violating your fiduciary liability.
Mm.
And so you've got a problem there. But more importantly is you probably can enhance your retirement plan if you just periodically, every 3 to 5 years, take a look at it. Is it still meeting your objectives? Is the record keeper the right record keeper? Is my advisor helping my employees? Is he helping us? Those kinds of things are critical. So I think the biggest thing is don't just set it and forget it. It's too important, and it's too big of a risk.
Right.
It's one of those things too where I had a situation where actually Eileen's company stepped in and helped, but one of the issues was the company had such massive growth so quickly that actually messed with some of the things that they were trying to do originally, but the conversation didn't kind of evolve over time with like where are we at today and what's important and how do we actually now have this plan in place and use it, where for me, it's like every 2 to 3 years really is kind of how I'm evaluating plans that are under my umbrella that I'm overseeing, just to make sure, because as a fiduciary, you got to make sure you have the lowest cost options and great investments, and your scope covers what all retirees one day will need to be able to have a nice diversified portfolio, right?
Right.
So if I only offered my company stock inside of that plan, well, that's not okay. Right. So you have to have a diversified approach so that your employees can pick from those. But that evolves, and that was in just having them talk to their own TPA sometimes is really important. Like, hey, what changed over the last year? Let's touch base here.
Right. Well, and as you said, the rules are changing.
Always.
Right. I mean, the rules are always changing. They're always monkeying around and tweaking it, and hopefully making it better, and sometimes always making it probably more complicated. And so you've got work, job security, and when you're trying to hit the moving target. So yeah.
Yeah. So review the plan. That's the biggest thing. Stay on top of it. Be a fiduciary. And understand you are a fiduciary, and you could be sued.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my previous stops in my life, the employer got sued. And they're a big company, but
oh yeah.
This happens, and this is why you just have to pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you want it, great to be an employer, great to take people on, great to do that, but it comes with responsibilities, and more so than you would know, and it happens all over the place. When I was on the school board, I mean, this is one of those places that things came up a lot. Was when the school board had things, legal stuff, it was either special education, that's huge area for legal stuff at school boards, or HR, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's just, that's where you get bit. So
Yeah.
Where do people find you? If they're like, oh my gosh, this sounds perfect. I need Irene. I need Eileen in my life.
I need to talk to an Eileen.
Well, they can certainly call us directly if they've got issues. Typically, the way people find us is their financial advisor.
Okay.
Will bring us in. They kind of, as Roy said, they tend to quarterback this relationship.
Oh.
I certainly can work with retirement plans without a financial advisor, but I don't like to. So I want to make sure, because the investment piece is also such a critical piece and there's so much liability, if they don't have a Roy who's helping them with that, there's a big gap and I can't ever fill that.
Right.
So, yeah, the creative retirement plan consulting, we're out on the internet.
I'm hearing from her. Call Roy first, and then Roy can maybe introduce you.
Yeah, there
I'm
you
pretty
go.
much saying call Roy.
Well, or for all those other Roys who listen to this podcast,
That's right.
which I'm
All of
sure
the
there are
Roys. A lot
dozens.
of Roys.
So credential retirement plans. You got a website?
We do. CreativeRPC.com.
CreativeRPC.com.
Oh, that's
All right.
easy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, we'll also gather your information and put it into our description for the podcast as well.
Okay.
So people can find your information down there as well. But do you have any other questions for Eileen based off of your vast experience of running a church?
Vast experience running a church. So no, not really. I mean, I think you've answered a lot of them, but I mean, but the nonprofit world in general, I mean, that's a thing, but we have employees and we've got those things to deal with as well. We're a part of the denominational structure, so we can do our retirement if we want through, the denomination process around that, which is nice. But for independent churches or, independent nonprofits, they don't have that either. They may not have that opportunity, to have services like that at their disposal. And nonprofits are employers.
Yes.
Right. And you're not going to talk so much about profit sharing in, necessarily in the nonprofit world. But employee matching and, that kind of thing is a thing, in our world as well. We have a lot of the same rules we got to follow like anybody else does.
And you work with those folks.
I do. Churches have their own special, unique rules. I don't know if you know that. Yeah.
We're unique, beautiful snowflakes.
Yeah.
Our own little world.
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah. Our little tax world. That's the weird part. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But yes, we work with nonprofits. We work with for-profit businesses.
Right.
Yep.
Well, because there's a lot of hospitals are nonprofits. And
Right.
so you're doing like it's 403Bs instead of 401k, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, so nonprofit doesn't necessarily mean small and it doesn't mean necessarily not a lot of money.
Right.
There are some very large, nonprofit systems out there as well. But, that's even when my late wife, she was in healthcare, but it was different rules from when I was in corporate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Eileen, it's been awesome hearing about you, to play off of what you provide in that qualified retirement planning space. There's also a non-qualified space, which could be a little drop for a future podcast for everyone out there that wants to learn about non-qualified plans.
Non-qualified. Oh my
Eileen
gosh.
has introduced me to a very vast wealth of resource in that area. So we might be trying to do that in the future as well.
All right. Well, right now it sounds bad. I'm like, I don't want non-qualified.
No, it's actually really good.
I'm sure
it's really cool for the
it's
employer.
unfortunately named, I'm sure. So, well, great. Well, thank you, Eileen, for joining us. We always learn a lot. Appreciate you coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you all for listening and being a part. As always, like, subscribe, share with your friends. If you're a small business owner, reach out to Roy or somebody like him if you've got some questions around things like this, or share this podcast with a small business owner you know and love. So help them do things the right way. Thanks so much, Roy.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it as always.
CWA is a Securities and Exchange Registered Investment Advisor. No content contained herein should be construed as an offer for investment advice or an offer for the purchase or sale of any security, insurance, or other investment product. Investments involve the risk of low loss, including loss of principal. Please consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before implementing any strategy presented here. Data presented here are obtained from believed reliable sources but cannot be guaranteed as to completeness or accuracy.